shouldn't be long. Oh, good, we're live. Well, Substack was down for lots of us this morning, but we're back online. I think they must have been doing some bits and bobs while everybody else was asleep in America. But in the UK, I had so many messages being like, "Is Substack down for you? Is everything okay?" But we're here now. And I invited Claire to come on and just have a little lunchtime chat with us about personal storytelling and the work that she does in that area. I thought it would be really interesting for you guys because we're talking about this a lot at the moment over at Sparkle and Substack. We've got Amy Beeson coming in on the 3rd of November into the membership to talk about brand storytelling and how that all fits together and how we can create a personal brand to protect ourselves. But this is slightly different, and I just wanted to give Claire some opportunity to talk about what it is that she offers and give you some food for thought about personal storytelling. So welcome, Claire.
Thanks. Lovely to be here.
It's such a nice thing to do, isn't it? Like when you've chatted, we've met each other in person as well, but when you've chatted on the internet for ages and then you're like, let's just jump on a live and kind of bring it to everybody a bit, it's just a bit easier, isn't it? So for those of you those are the people that don't know who you are in the world and what you're writing about, do you want to just give us a little bio about yourself and what brought you over to Substack?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I've been writing in some way, shape or form for a very, very long time. A lot on the internet, as we do. But my background is law, so I was a lawyer for 12 years. So people often say to me, "My goodness, that's a big pivot. Like, how did that happen?" But I think, when I was a lawyer, I was all about the words, the right places. And I realised that actually my love and my passion lay in words and storytelling and writing. So that was why I changed course, I suppose. And I just really like Substack. It just feels like as a platform, it suits me really well. I'm on lots of other platforms and I use them too, but the community part on Substack feels really, really good. So
Yeah,
that's
it feels really nice, doesn't it? And what's the name of your Substack, Claire?
It's called At Heart.
Perfect.
Because I'm a writer at heart, and I share stories that are vulnerable, honest. I lay myself bare quite a lot, and I write about failure, about being good enough, running a lot. If you follow me for a while, you'll know that, and mental health, and just the kind of realities of life, really.
So when you're coming to the keyboard just to help us understand and you're thinking about you want to tell a story, how are you gauging that in terms of how deep you're going to go? Like you talk about laying everything bare, being quite vulnerable with it all. How do you manage your own sense of self in that, and how do you then connect to the story that other people will land with and connect with?
Yeah, I love that question. And it's a question I get asked a lot. I think boundaries are so important. And I have discovered, particularly recently, that my boundaries are mine. I can choose exactly what they look like.
Yeah.
And there are some experiences that I would love to share at some point down the line, but not yet. So it's just about kind of being really intentional about how you identify what those things are. Journaling helps me a lot because that helps me get stuff down on the page and gives me a sense of, oh, maybe it's too raw. It's not ready for the world yet. There's that quote, isn't there? You share from the scar, not the wounds. It's just being really intentional and boundaried and setting aside the shoulds. If you feel a sense of, oh, I should be doing this, that's always an invitation to go, oh, let's just take a step back. Let's reflect on this.
And sometimes we feel compelled to tell story to help others feel less alone or to help with connection and all those sorts of things. So I feel like sometimes the story is for us, sometimes it's to connect, sometimes it's to feel less alone. Like there's just a lot in there, isn't there, when it comes to personal storytelling. I published a piece yesterday that sort of wove around a lot, but it was basically unearthing that feeling of connecting to buying too many takeaway coffees during the pandemic that then just didn't really stop. There's definitely been like a takeaway coffee habit that I've been aware of. But obviously, lots of people have that. Lots of people have that crux, and lots of people consciously choose it. Other people don't. And so I was able to sort of weave it into quite a personal story, but then one that I feel quite far away from, because the pandemic was, 5 years ago now. So it was really interesting to write with that filter of nostalgia and then bring it back to what I'm trying to say here in terms of what is it that I want to bring more conscious attention to, because my company is called Creatively Conscious. Like, I'm all about how can we bring more conscious attention, like how can we be creative in the way that we think and feel. So there's always that when things get a bit unruly, the dog wants to be out 2 seconds. When things get a bit unruly and you're trying to tether, where is this story going? It sometimes, and I know this with clients as well, it can sometimes just stay in a forever draft. I'd love you to speak to that point, like how we push past and go, this is done enough now, or this is good enough now, or I'm ready to say this, and what that feels like. I'll just let the dog out. Carry on chatting. Come on then.
Yeah, that's such a good question, Claire. I've got a lot to say about that. I think, interestingly, I was having a conversation with someone, a fellow business owner, on at a networking event last week.
Oh, nice.
And she was saying, I know that, personal storytelling is really popular and trendy at the moment, isn't it? But I'm just never really sure kind of how I'm supposed to do it, and what I'd say and how I connect that to the point and all the rest of it. And I said to her, so the best advice I give to myself and to other people is where you begin. And it's that kind of heart posture, thinking, what is the purpose of this story? And how, like, setting aside for a minute how storytelling can serve us as the teller. How can we best serve our listener or our reader? And starting from that place really helps me kind of answer that question. But also I've realised, particularly over the past year or so, I think that it's so important to use my voice and our voice as well. So you're right, that's such a good example of the benefit on both sides. So for your listener and your reader, you're giving them the gift of your story, which I love, but also you're giving yourself the gift of showing up using your voice. So that, I use the phrase, put your heart into words. That's really what I aim to do. And being able to do both of those at the same time, takes practice and courage. And guidance, but the good news is it's in us all instinctively. We're all storytellers. We all have that capacity, which I think is really...
and it's the practicing bit, isn't it? The dancing with the publish button. I feel like now I very rarely overthink that. I'm like, I just know when a piece is ready. It feels like, for so long I was overriding my nervous system and being like, done is better than perfect. We're just going to put it out. We're building. It was a great time of growth on Substack, and it was like, I'm just building, like I'm finding people that want to connect, I'm putting stuff out, and that felt really good. And then in the editing, I really like the process of editing now and coming back. Usually I do 2 or 3 editing sessions before a post goes live, and I didn't used to do that. I just used to write it and then, read it once through, and then it would go out. But now the editing really helps me to frame, as an engagement consultant, where are people going to engage? Where am I going to turn people off and turn people away? But where is my voice in all of that? And I'm going to publish it anyway. So that's what I kind of try and look at now. But that's only come, I would say, in the last 6 months or so, with like a regular practice of showing up and publishing and connecting in the comments and all that all the wonderful tools that give us.
And that's so right. It all comes through practice, doesn't it? And kind of noticing how your practice best serves you and your work. So like you, I've realized that I work best with just have a spark of an idea. And I think, what do I want to say? And I just sort of regurgitate it all on the page. Maybe I've made some handwritten notes and I put it all on my laptop, and then I often will leave it for a day. And then come back with a fresh pair of eyes, and then more of a perspective of what do I want people to feel when they read this, and what do I want people to to take away from this?
Mm.
And where are those points in my writing where I can just make it as easy as possible for people to kind of step into that?
Yeah.
And like you say, engage. And it's all about inviting people in, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
definitely looking for those invites throughout the piece. And I know we chatted a couple of weeks ago because you're in Sparkle on Substack and you'd taken my free audience development class, Audience Alchemy. And in that class, we were doing this blend of the personal and the professional, which I think has been a really beautiful thing to express on Substack. So, say if I was to go over to LinkedIn today, it would be a different type of writing, a different type of invite, a different type of showing up. Whereas with Substack, I feel like I've had this wonderful permission slip to blend some of the personal and the professional together. Instead of having this rigid professional persona that I have to show up underneath, that actually feel like helps me, just, makes me feel a bit stifled. So I'd be really interested in where you've landed now with that work, Claire, and what that invite is for your, maybe even, your free and your paid subscribers. And we look at it that way. So we look at, okay, what are we inviting readers into, and then what are we showing up and inviting paid subscribers into? Using your professional expertise, your story, obviously evolving from being a lawyer to doing this work. I'd love to hear how you've kind of merged it all together.
Yeah, it's been such a journey because, like LinkedIn, for example, as a platform, I have a lot of lawyers who follow me on there because that's my background, and my husband is still in that environment too. So, so there's lots of professionals on there, and then also there's other kind of particularly creative entrepreneurs that I've connected with on there too. And then on Instagram and then Substack, and Facebook is still rumbling along in the background. There are different people. So it's felt like quite an interesting blend. And one thing I would say is that I'm, rather than compartmentalizing myself on those platforms, I'm growing more in courage and intuition in showing up as myself.
Yeah.
So the thing I like about LinkedIn in particular is that it's just me on there. I know people do have business pages, but my content is me. And yes, it might be a little bit, there'll be tweaks, there'll be nuances across different platforms, but essentially I'm sharing very similar content or signposting to Substack or whatever I'm doing. And I've been quite surprised how particularly professional people have appreciated that, and how people, particularly from my former corporate days, have said, "Oh, I really enjoy reading your content on LinkedIn."
Oh, that's cool.
I'm like,
yeah.
really? They're like, yeah. So, and I always think with my legal background, I've brought together in the work I do now that kind of eye for detail and that fascination with the detail and nuance of language with my creative flair and imagination and that kind of thing, and somehow it works. But it has helped me, particularly on Substack, doing your Audience Alchemy class, kind of being a bit braver and narrowing down who I actually want to talk to here. And then if there are other people who want to listen and read too, that's absolutely fine. People will come over, but I have perhaps 2 or 3 real people in the back of my mind when I'm writing, because I know that what I say resonates with them. So that's been super helpful. So I think it's been clear on your ecosystem, kind of what are all the components of your work and where do they all sort of slot together?
Yeah.
And not being afraid to kind of go to show up in different spaces as yourself and say, this is what I'm offering, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
With the nuance to best serve that particular audience, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think, like you alluded to, and like we talked about in the class, getting really clear on who is showing up and why, and quieting the noise of some of the other people that will just always be the people that hang out. Like when I first started teaching about Substack, primarily my Instagram audience was friends, colleagues, a few sort of followers that I didn't really know who they were. And definitely a few of my Northeast based colleagues joined in with some of the classes that I was doing and took interest. But usually, for the most part, they were entrepreneurs. So they had businesses. They saw it as a business savvy opportunity to lean in, like they trusted me. And so those were the people who were more like the independent artists and people that were freelancers. They took longer to kind of warm to Substack as an idea, Substack as a tool for self-expression, Substack as somewhere to put their energy and their time. And I do think that that massively helped me in terms of the language that I could use to say to people, look, this is a really beautiful opportunity for connection. If you are at capacity and you barely have time to post on any social media, then no, you're not going to sit and write a Substack post. But if you run a business that affords you some space and time to think about your wider content ecosystem and longer form content, which Substack is so great at giving us a house for, then that's perfect. And so even that in the early days, seeing the names of the people that turned up and seeing the names of the people that purchased replays and that sort of thing gave me a bit of a firm foundation. And then cut over the top of that, my passion for staying creative and taking care of our well-being, not burning out, and being able to weave that stuff in as well and say, look, the internet will convince you should never sleep, and you'll be, constantly creating content, and then your website's out of date and you've got that to do, and then now you need to start a Blue Sky account and all of this other stuff. Whereas actually, if you're grounded in personal story and you know exactly what your North Star is in terms of what you're flashing up for people, then you should have the confidence to know that they will be ready to turn around and find you. And I think you've definitely got that in your work. Like, I feel like it's so clear what it is that you're offering. And then the bit for me that I find curious and interesting in myself is that there's a skill set there that if I'd found you, 5 years ago, that would have been what I needed, but I didn't know that at the time. So it's that thing, like, you don't know what you need, do you, until you sort of start getting stuck or start questioning yourself or start asking yourself, is this the story arc that I'm leading with, or should I talk about things in this way? Have you got your paid subscriptions all set up and turned on now, Claire? I've lost track with it all.
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what are those sessions? What are you doing with that part of it all?
Yeah, so I've created a virtual space, I suppose, called the Story Space within my At Heart Substack publication. I wanted to keep it quite gentle, quite light touch, because life is busy, but I really wanted to give people some tools and inspiration and encouragement, I suppose, to help them use storytelling more.
Okay.
In whatever their space might be. So it will often be in a work context, perhaps in a leadership context, or a life context. It's one of those wonderful tools that really translates so well. So in the story space, I do Zoom, 90-minute Zooms kind of every term, I think. Ought to know that information off the top of my head. Yes, I've got those scheduled, and it's just 90 minutes to show up, have a bit of input from me around storytelling, and then lots of journaling, because that is my go-to tool. And then my hope is that people will walk away from the session with some kind of story-led content that they can go off and use, whether that's content on a platform like Substack or LinkedIn, other platforms we've mentioned, or whether it might be I work with someone who wanted a story to use in a kind of a team presentation. There's so many different ways to use it. So I do that every term, and then I also do what I call a Story Sparks email twice a month with some prompts and tips and tools that you can go away and use. And also sharing one of my stories personally around my business, and kind of breaking down how I've done that, and what it looks like. So
Beautiful. So say if I was launching something new, I'm just thinking about the type of people who I know will be tuning in and will be kind of working all this through their system. So they might have something new. It could be a new paid offering, it could be a new project, it could be a new artwork, it could be anything new, but it's brand new and they want to plug some sort of personal story into why they have created that, like tell people about the why, not just show them the thing. Do you have ways in that would help them to sort of articulate that? And how deep can they go with that? Like, is that like we've got some sort of starting point? So I'm thinking about Audience Alchemy, for example. So I've created Audience Alchemy because behind the scenes, I work across platforms and I'm known as the Substack person that you can go to. And so I wanted to give people the holistic, especially business owners, the holistic of working across platforms because it actually is a relatively light lift in loads of ways and people don't realize that. So just the way my brain works things out. So I would start with like, that's the fact. Like, that's why I wanted to create it because I feel like it's important for business owners. I don't want people to burn out. I want people to use their creativity. I want people to know how to outsource. But then the personal story in there, where do I pull for that, Claire? Like, how do I get into that? Where am I? Like, that's the what, but it's like, but why? Like, why far back do I go? Like, do I talk about my career? Do I talk about being a mum? Like, where do I go with that stuff?
I think you can talk about anything. I would start with a couple of things. One is kind of the emotion. So how are you feeling in this story? Can you identify that emotion? And is that the emotion you want to invite your listener or reader into? How do you
magical.
feel?
It's magical. That's why it's called Audience Alchemy, because I think the internet is magical. And I've had so many different magical connects with loads of people across the world. And that's one of the things that I always wanted. When I was working just in the northeast of England, occasionally in London, a little bit internationally, I was like, I just want to work internationally more. Like, I love connecting to different cultures, to different people, to understand different like ways that people live their life and design their life. So that was the piece, like the piece of alchemizing your audience globally that got me excited.
Yeah, that's lovely. So thinking about that feeling, the best compliment someone can give me when they read a piece of my content, whatever that content might be, would be I feel seen, or into words how I feel, and I think, oh yes, so it's so important to think about that, and then also kind of the purpose behind it. So, it might be that you're just sharing a personal story just to provide that connection to allow people to see you and to get to know you.
A bit of content.
Or like you've spoken before about the know, like, trust sort of process. And there's a difference between a piece of content or a story you might share that looks at the know piece or the like piece, but that might differ from if you're really asking for your audience's trust, and that takes time, and that's where you can go deeper and more vulnerable if that's what you want to do. But I do see a lot of stories online, particularly on aforementioned platforms, and it feels like someone has taken a story of quite a random experience and then sort of shoehorned in a call to action at the end to say, "Oh, I saw this squirrel, and that reminded me of this," and and I always think, well, full marks for creativity. Brilliant.
Like hooking us in to want to read the thing. Now you tell them the thing that you offer.
But I also think actually I want to connect with something real. So if you are going to tell me a story about a squirrel, for example, I just mentioned that because there is a squirrel doing laps around our garden. Tell me something real about you. Like what was your experience, or what's an experience you've walked a client through, or something. That makes it far more relatable.
You got to bridge it a bit. So it's like there's a squirrel running around my office. It's a grey one, not a red one. The red ones are endangered. Once upon a time, this career didn't exist. Now it does, but we've got to take care of it the same way. Bring it all back round again. I mean, that was But red squirrels unite.
Right. Rather than just going, there's a red squirrel, and therefore here's the lesson in business connected to the
squirrel. So it's like laying that out. You're using the journaling techniques to unearth it a bit more, looking at whether it is the no, the like, or the trust, or all three, weaving that through, and then creating something that you feel really proud of that doesn't feel icky, because I definitely know what you mean. It's like you think you're reading one thing and then it's just like yet another sales pitch. And it's like, not everything needs to be a sales pitch. Like you can just tell stories and connect and share, and then send a sales email, a really clear sales email. And anybody who's built up that understanding of who you are and what you offer will just be ready to buy. I mean, but you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't all have to be shoehorned into the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's another creator I follow called George Cow. I don't know whether you've come across him.
No.
He talks about sort of he separates out kind of heart-led content that's more of a kind of service piece from sales content.
Yeah.
And it's really clear which is which. And I really like that, because like you, I've struggled so much over the past few years with selling. I just find it so difficult. So sort of reframing that into that sort of, here's what I'm offering you completely for free, just because I want to share this with you.
Yeah.
To this is, I'm selling something to you today, and it's still a basic service, but
and being really clear in that. And I think, I think clarity is kindness. I really do, especially in an online world. Last year I got called out on Notes quite a bit for my sales emails, because I was selling about Substack, but at the same time, like, I totally stand behind the business that I've created and the work that I do. I think I'm really good at it, and if they've ended up on my email list because they've signed up for a free thing, then they've had the free thing. Like, they don't have to be sold to, they can leave. Like, it genuinely is an active service to create the free things for thousands of people. But then also, I'm allowed to have a business, and I'm allowed to tell people this is the deadline to sign up, because it is. And if you don't sign up by this deadline, I am putting my price up in January, or whatever it was. It was something around that they sort of took umbrage to. And everybody piled on, not everybody, but obviously in my sensitive little nervous system, I was like, oh my God, like, I've never felt worse. This is awful. I really want to ring them and explain. And then you realize that people just take what they want to take. But the fear of that happening again really had me in inertia for quite a while, because you feel like you've told your stories, you've set out your stall, you've given all of the free stuff that you want to give out, but there will just be the odd person that just takes what they want to take from what they've seen, because we can't curate everything, and then like have something to say about it. And I think writing online, it is what holds a lot of us back. But I often say to my clients, they're not for us. Like, if they were for us, they'd be in our world and they'd want to stay in our world, and they would have like spent time getting to know who we actually are, rather than making a snap judgment. So it just can be quite complicated in our nervous systems, I think, anyway, telling stories online. And then there's the place where there's the fear of where it meets the audience and how that's going to feel. So this year has been like one of the biggest years for nervous system work, in terms of like the edits that I allow myself, because some of that is a safety piece of like, I'll just edit a bit more gently, and I'll just make sure that people understand the nuance. And I'll say things like, there's nuance in everything. Like, I'll just say that statement now, because I've just learned that people are sort of race reading, and they don't always understand the nuance on a thing at a certain time, and maybe a sales email goes out quite soon after that. So it is good to know that we've got this other holistic side of things, where it's about storytelling and connection, but also honour that to make a success of business, and to feel like we are being able to go deeper and be more intimate with our paid subscribers, that there is going to be a sales ask at some point.
100%. And we have to ask, don't we? And knowing that the reaction of that other person is 99% about them, and probably not even 1% about you. And I've had that experience, and it kind of, I think often because we exist in a bit of an echo chamber, it doesn't happen very often. So when the first time someone direct messaged me to say, oh, I read this, and it, basically went off on a rant, I was a bit like, whoa, okay. That's really interesting. So how am I going to react to this? And also understanding that was all about her and her situation, and really I was just a little trigger. That. So, and
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm. I think just like you say, tightening up those boundaries around what the piece is that exists separate to us. Like the version of us is live on the internet right now, and we are like, here we are, it's live, it's happening. But the versions of us that will post in the future and posted in the past, that was a piece of art, a piece of work that we've put out, and it connected with who it connected with at the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think storytelling actually can be like a really beautiful, comforting cloak in lots of ways, because the piece is embedded in story then rather than embedded in your living, breathing reality right here and now. Like this doing a live is probably the most exposing, like showing up that you'll do. Whereas with storytelling, I think there's lots of comfort in it, Claire. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of one of the reasons I love individual stories. They're just so, they make up pieces of who we are. They're so
True.
precious and so unique as well. And you might think, who wants to hear a story about my everyday moments of my life? But the truth is, people do, and they find the connection in those ordinary details.
We have
Because
to be
they're
we
really.
have to be careful what we're telling ourselves as well. Like sometimes with the stats, I've like fallen foul to like looking at the stats and thinking, oh, this isn't being very well received. But then I'll get the most beautiful message from somebody who's I really loved this because of X, Y, and Z. Quite often on the audio stuff that I do, because the audio isn't heavily engaged with the same way as posts might be. So I definitely had like a vulnerability to move past with that. And I would tell myself, oh, it's not clear enough, I should record it again. But I didn't have time like to get the art out into the world and to lean into a congruent creative practice at that time. It just had to be done before the school run, and then it had to be scheduled, and then I was on with the next thing. So I think inviting people to witness, comment, drop you a DM, like tell you what is connecting for them, is part of the practice of showing up and feeling confident in that. I definitely found that in myself.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about stepping away from perfectionism, isn't it? And
Oh yeah, if we can.
yeah, if we can. And I've noted, I'm trying to post weekly at the moment, which I'm sort of managing 2 or 3 a month. But I have noticed the more I post, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
Because my time is limited, and therefore I have to sort of try and switch off some of the overthinking. And like you were saying, once that piece of art, whatever we create, once it's in the world, it's having the confidence to go, there you go, that's it. Now what's next? And I try not to read back things I wrote a few years ago, because they'll make me wince.
Will they? See, I just
Yeah.
feel so proud of that person. Like I've definitely moved through that, and I definitely had the wincing. And now when I go back, I'm like, you didn't know. Like there's a naivety, there's a wide-eyedness, there's so much hope, there's so much anticipation. And now I'm like, you did so well. Like you just,
Yeah.
I was saying to Amy last week that I'd literally written down to the minutiae of detail, like what I was going to wear on my first video, when I did my first course, that there was going to be a plant in the background, that I would have a mug. Like I'd planned it out to the nth degree. Now I just literally show up and like, hopefully my husband brings me a cup of tea if I'm up here too long. But yeah, it's like the showing up, I just can feel really proud of myself. So I don't know whether that's a helpful reframe for you, but I know that when I sat with it a bit more, it was for me the fear of people that I was being commissioned by seeing it. So there was a mismatch, because at the time I was still working on commissioned work, and my commissioned self is very different to this version. Like it just is. And so when I dug into the weeds of it, it was like, oh, what if that person sees and they'll be like, what is she doing? Like, who does she think she is? Who's going to watch that? Like 3 viewers, like whatever else. But of course, you've got to go through some of that to get to the place where you feel like you're able to hold a bigger amount of people. If you posted just to 3 viewers and then all of a sudden that went viral, your nervous system would be shot, because there is that beautiful time of just showing just a handful of people.
Yeah.
Chatting to them, finding the connects, meeting people in person, having nice Zoom coffees, doing the odd live. So yeah, I hope you can find the compassion in that version of yourself, Claire.
It's so true. And as you were talking, I was reminded that particularly during the pandemic, I used to do quite a lot of live Facebook or Instagram
Oh, did
lives
you?
when I
Yeah.
was running. And I didn't bother about what I looked like, because usually they were sweaty, no makeup, bit of a mess. And they were completely spontaneous. So I didn't
Yeah.
have time to kind of overthink stuff. I just got a little idea. I thought, oh, I'm just going to go live
Yeah.
and talk about it.
Let's do
So
it.
whereas today I'm like, what jumper am I going to wear? Do I need to put on some lipstick so I don't look too pale? you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think in all of the work that I do around audience development, a lot of our fears and the more shadow side of what we go through to bring our work to the page and publish it is to do with either people in our real life or people in our past. So when I was doing one of the first projects that I did on the internet, I called it Creativity Island for Mums, and named a journal with the same title and all of that gorgeous stuff. There was someone in my life at the time that I would spend a lot of time with, and she had absolutely no interest in this project, even though she was the exact right fit, like mum with young kids, really creative, just no interest. And it literally drove me bananas. Like, it didn't matter whether I mentioned it subtly, whether I showed her, like, oh, I'm so proud, like, I've got the journal, I'm so excited about it. Zero interest, none. And then when the journal was due out, I was like, do I gift her a copy of the journal? Like, she's my friend, so that would feel really nice to give her it. But then a couple of other friends were buying it, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So I'm like looking for her approval all the time, but she's already showed me loads of times that she really doesn't care, and she just wants to talk to me about, what milestones the kids are going through or whatever else. She just had no interest in that. It doesn't necessarily mean the end of a friendship, but it is just a separation. It's like that person just isn't going to be interested, and that's okay, because we are showing up for other people over here. So I think I learned a lot going through that, and that vulnerability piece of like trying to bring people in that just weren't really that interested or bothered. Versus being a beacon for the work. This is my human design as well. Being a beacon for the work and knowing that my right people would find me and trusting that process a bit more.
It's so true. And that also comes from being really confident in your own story and your skill and who you're talking to, and just standing in that, and that trusting your intuition, and that takes time, doesn't it? It's a process for sure.
Yeah, it definitely does. Well, it was so beautiful to check in with you, Claire. If anybody wants to go over and follows Claire's Substack and connect to the deeper paid offer, I think it is a really beautiful complement to us writing regularly on Substack and to us questioning some of the other tools that Substack give us, like the live video, but also like reading our work aloud. So a lot of my clients, they're still at the place where it feels terrifying to read their read their work aloud, because that's their voice. And they're frightened that if they start reading it, they'll want to change it all and all of that sort of stuff. And I think being grounded in personal story and owning what it is and why, doing the work around your values and doing the work around this story isn't going to be for everybody, and that's okay, can be massively helpful to the confidence piece that you need to show up more regularly and definitely consistently as we, battle all the algorithms that we battle online, focusing on those beautiful that we have and new people coming into our spaces every week as well.
Absolutely. And just to mention as well, I'd completely forgotten about this, but I'm doing a journaling workshop in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
On the 4th of November. It's completely free to free subscribers. So nice. So again, just an invitation to kind of dig more into your story.
Well, I'd love to come. That'll be right up my street. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I can link in the comments.
Yeah, perfect. So we're going to post the replay of this live if you miss it, but obviously if you subscribe to Claire, you'll get the updates about that.
Yeah.
But I think showing up to the page, showing up and just chipping away at this work, cultivating what it is, brings loads and loads of breakthroughs. Like, you've seen how Claire mentored me live on the call when I was saying, well, it's this and these are the reasons. And those are the things that we can sit with longer term. We don't have to have it all figured out for our about page. We can show up, say what we know, dive more into the practice and the process of posting, and then circle back to the about page and say, do you know what, actually, like, this is it. This is the anchor that I want to describe to other people and what I want to be known for. So yeah, perfect. Thank you, Claire.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's been a joy.
It's been lovely. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.